Hey everybody, Drew Larison, co-host of the Small Success Podcast here. I wanted to drop a little note before this episode begins, because it's a unique episode. As you know, probably because you clicked on the podcast to listen, this week we are interviewing two of the major local mayoral candidates from Kokomo, Indiana, where our office is located. And how we've formatted the podcast is the first part of the episode, we're talking about small business communities and city government and how the candidate feels like that relationship should go. And then the second part is where we get into some actual local issues happening in Kokomo and trying to discuss with that candidate what they think of those issues. So if you're interested in the business communication and conversation, just keep listening. It's about to begin. If you're interested just in the local part, the local issues part, and trying to find out what the candidate believes, go ahead and skip forward to the 1 hour, 21 minute, and 45 second mark. That's when that conversation begins. So thank you for listening. We hope to see you soon.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Small Success Podcast, another very special edition coming at you today. I am Pam Downing. I'm the Operations and Marketing Strategist here at Larison Media, and I'll have my co-host introduce himself.
Hey everybody, my name is Drew Larison. I am the founder and creative director of Larison Media, and as always, thank you for having me.
You're welcome,
today.
Drew.
It's really nice.
Really glad you're here. And everyone, I am so excited to introduce you to our guest today. We are continuing our series of interviewing candidates for the mayor of the city of Kokomo. And here in studio, we have Abbie Smith.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
Good. Thanks for having me. I'm really enjoying the sound of my own voice in these headphones.
It's something.
Your equipment is legit. I'm not going to lie.
It's
you
fun.
won't want to leave.
I've never
this.
sounded better. And believe me, I have made a lot of videos and heard my voice a lot in the last couple of months, more than my entire life. And it's never sounded better than it has.
You won't want to leave
Media.
the experience of the
Surround
headphones
sound.
on the podcast.
And I just got AirPods, which life-changing for me.
Really?
They were pretty amazing.
Nice.
So, but this wins.
Good.
These are better.
Glad to hear.
Hey. Okay, it really is fun. I'm just going to do a little shout out. If you're a small business owner and you want to come on the Small Success Podcast, hit
We have
us
a good
up.
time.
Okay, so Abbie, tell us about yourself. Tell us about your background and tell us why do you want to be the next mayor of Kokomo?
Yeah, that's always the big question, right?
Big question.
So I have always lived around Kokomo. I'm originally from Tipton, which is just down the road. We went to church here. My stepmom worked here. So, always known Kokomo, but my family and I moved here about 7 years ago. We were living in Southern California, and my husband works now for a fishing industry, but before the golf industry, so that's why we were there. We had two small children, and so we were absolutely insane to move away from free grandparent babysitting, and so we moved back for that. But really what brought us back was my job working for United Way. So, it was new, and I have always been in nonprofit management. I've always been, driven to help people in some way, and then just kind of found my lane getting into, United Way work. It's a lot closer to the action. So you get to see real people who need things and real people who are willing to help, whether it's giving or volunteering. And it's just, I love this work. I've been, really happy to do it. And it's been very fulfilling. It's very stressful, but it's good work. So I do have a husband. His name is Nate Stout. He's great. He works in, fishing industry, marine technology on fishing boats. Like, do you even know what that is? It took a while for me to figure it out.
It's the little screen on a boat that sends the sonar and you see little fish.
Yeah, that's a fish finder. Yeah, they also have depth finders, which I think is like the same thing, and trolling motors. So just so you know. And then I have two children, Matilda and Jack. Matilda is 12 and a 7th grader at Central, and Jack is 9 and a 3rd grader at Sycamore. So I working at United Way. Why do I want to run for mayor, right? Why do I want to do this? I have sat in meeting after meeting and seen situation after situation for the last 7 years. We get a lot of access. So I hear employers saying, I can't find anybody to hire. We've got, all these positions to fill, but people, that are applying, they're not qualified to do it, or, they have a lot of issues. They don't last through the 90 days. And then, I go to union meetings and, meetings at Ivy Tech or IUK, and they have these wonderful job training programs. and we can't get anybody to come to them. And then I go back to United Way. We've got thousands of people who come through our doors every day. Not every day, right? In a year.
Sure,
so,
yeah.
right. The people come through our doors every day, thousands in a year. And, they just need a job. They need one job that will pay the bills to, and maybe, retire someday, maybe go on a vacation, have health care. Excuse me. So I keep listening and I kind of look around like, is nobody else hear these things? And, so that's why I'm running. I mean, I try to get these things going and try to get make these connections, but I need the leverage to pull those resources together. And, I think this opportunity came and this is my next step. This is the next way that I get to serve people and specifically the people of Kokomo.
That's great. That's awesome. Okay. Well, on our podcast and kind of this first half here, we exist to serve people as well, particularly small business owners and entrepreneurs. So we're going to focus our conversation a little bit that way. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on how do you see the role of small businesses in a community like ours, like in a community like Kokomo?
Okay. Well, I think in any community, that's where real innovation happens. You got to get creative because you have a lot of work to do to get anything done, right? To make your business work or eventually make money. So, and I think a lot of times people will come out of bigger companies and because they were restricted in some way, whether that was their schedule or their creativity or money, right? Their earning potential. So they're looking for a way to just break free and do their own thing. So I think that's really where we get a lot of creativity in our community. And also they employ a lot of people. So, it may be one or two people at a time, but small businesses absolutely are some of our largest employers. They don't happen, they don't, do it in one fell swoop, but they do it person by person and grinding every single day to make it work.
Yeah. Have you yourself have any involvement in small business or background in that way?
Yeah. So my dad is an entrepreneur and a small business owner. So he went out on his own. I was about 14 years old and, he installs grain systems. So grain bins, right? They're not silos, just so everybody knows that, right? And
I don't know
you
that.
didn't know that?
I'm married to a farmer.
Oh, yeah. You do know that well. Thank you. It's a, point of information. Please get it right.
Good to know.
So he, it was like that. He felt like if I'm going to be working this hard, then I'm going to be working for myself. And for my dad, it was also very much, he wanted to create his own business culture that wasn't where he was working. It was a little rough and he wanted it a little more, subdued, if that makes sense.
Sure.
Kind of in language. So,
what year was that taking place?
1994.
That's good. That's interesting. Cause I feel like the whole topic of culture is a newer topic inside of like businesses.
Well, yeah, like he didn't use that word.
But that's what he was saying.
He was like, I don't want to work here every day.
The foresight of that, I guess, is good to have.
So I like the work. I like he's good at it. But he just didn't want to work like that every day. And so he did actually have a choice. I remember that very well. He had his application ready to go into a big company and, terrified as my parents were. I mean, you only pick up on so much as a kid, the risk involved in saying no to a very good job that has good benefits and good paid time off. And with, two kids, late middle school and high school ready to go into college. And they both of my parents have some college but didn't finish. So they both felt really strongly that we needed to go. So, facing all that uncertainty, they did it. And he, I don't want to say he was gone all the time. My dad was always there. He's a wonderful dad. But he did work really hard. So it was a sun up to sundown type of job. It's outside all the time. I remember him packing his lunch, which was the peanut butter and jelly sandwich and carrots and celery and Lay's potato chips, like Diet Cokes. Like this is what's in my dad's lunchbox every day. So I also remember, which might be your nightmare as entrepreneurs yourself, answering the phone. So this was really before cell phones. I mean, they were the big things in the trunk. So it's not like you could just call him and get a hold of them.
Yeah.
So it was before he had a business line, but then even when he did, like nobody called that because you couldn't get a hold of him on it. And, he hates being in the office. So that's always a struggle for him is to bill people, which then my mom is like, you got to build anyway. Like,
Yeah. It's kind of the reason you're doing all this stuff.
Kind of remember that. Like, I know you love the work, but we got to pay the bills. So, so then his customers would start calling the house, and you can imagine sassy 14-year-old Abbie, like, hello.
What do you want?
What do you want? And, it's my dad's biggest customer. And I'm like,
so funny.
I think like some guy named John called, and who called?
Yeah, which John?
He was mean.
He was like, I was waiting for a phone call, and he called, right?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So, I'm not sure we were the best office help there for my dad, but.
I have very similar, like when we started this company, I worked from home. Like I had like a home office, and like the terror. I'm on a client call and like dogs start barking in the background, and like what is the most unprofessional possible thing to happen?
Nailed it.
Yeah, I'd have to like mute. Shut up. Yeah. So about the second quarter of
or the snapping. Like I do a lot of snapping at my children when I'm on the phone and they are not like,
Very funny. I can't imagine Ellie answering the phone.
Facial expressions. This is a podcast, so not visual.
Right. But man, if you could imagine that. Yeah. So I
even though if Ellie started answering my calls, she'd probably do it better than I would.
She'd kill it.
She very well could.
She'd probably upsell him somehow.
So I think, just watching that grow, and he worked really hard and he did a good job. So I think that the lesson is the quality of the work is really where a small business is going to grow. So
good work turns into more work.
And he stresses every single year, because it's a seasonal business, right? It's an agribusiness. So, that he's not going to get enough jobs, and then it immediately flips to how am I going to get all this done? So my sister and I both spent summers poking bolts, which if you guys don't know what that is, but you literally somebody's on one side of a grain bin and you're poking a bolt through 2 pieces of bin sheet metal. And then somebody's on the other side running an impact wrench. So they've got a handheld wrench, and you just
that was going to be my next question. If you got involved, like in the business
for sure. Yeah. I mean, I've been in many grain bins where the rats run out from underneath the disgusting bin floor. I mean, it is not pretty work, but I have noticed like some people getting their wedding photos taken outside of grain bins now, like on the staircase that goes up the side. And
thanks, Pinterest.
Right. Yeah. But the funny thing is, I know which bins are my dad's, and I just know the way that they look. I know the way that he builds them, and so it's kind of fun. It's interesting too to watch technology evolve. And so people will want an AutoCAD drawing of their grain system, and he's like, no. He's like, you can go to somebody else. It's fine, but
it's just not what we do.
So then he gets out like a 1x8, right? Probably not that, and starts drawing. Like this is what's kind of going to look like, and he's like, the Pythagorean theorem's the Pythagorean theorem. I don't know why. So I told him you need to just like draw it and then tape it up on a computer screen and take a picture of it and say, here's your drawing of your. So he's 66, and so at some point, we say he's going to retire. He's never going to retire.
Right.
It's just not. He's built to work. That's what he does. He thinks and he works, and he likes it. So
I think it's very similar in my family. Like, so Grandpa started a business. Well, technically, I'm the 4th generation entrepreneur in our family. My great grandfather was a farmer, so insane entrepreneur there. And then my grandpa started the business, and then Dad took over that business from him. But like very similar, Dad's first jobs in the business were like sweeping the floor at midnight, the shop floor, and like Grandpa made him start there, and then leveled up to like the toilets, and then like leveled up, to like cleaning the machinery and everything like that. So
my favorite jobs that I got to do were when I moved up to being able to drive large equipment. So whether that was a semi to go get a bin, because you have to go get it and they put it on the trailer and stuff. I remember distinctly one memory listening to Alicia Keys. Her second album in this giant truck and driving a grain bin on the back of the trailer. I'm like,
it was usually the only, like John Denver was the only thing playing in that truck before.
I don't know. Yeah. I mean, it was, I had to bring my own stuff because I'm not listening to whatever's in there, but it was, Ab, can you go get this grain bin today? Sure can. Yeah. Let me get my CDs. Yeah.
My CD booklet will be good.
As long as I've got my tunes, I can do it.
That's great.
In my head, like you pull up and your dad hears what's playing on
the
truck.
Yeah. I did not.
What did I do?
Did not leave the CDs in there because they would have been broken. And it was not part of his culture, right? Yeah. It was his culture he was trying to build.
We're more of a Toby Keith company.
Yes, for sure.
Well, definitely picking up on some universal small business themes here. The risk, the hard work, the family involvement. Really, really cool. So Abbie, along those lines and thinking about small businesses, what plans do you have to help further the success and maybe we call it the prosperity of small businesses in Kokomo?
So I have a question. What's the difference between success and prosperity?
It's good. Okay. Well, we've talked about success a lot on this podcast, and we have come to find really everyone has different definitions of success. So for one small business owner, that may just mean starting. Like success for this year looks like I did the thing. Right. I started my business. Prosperity to me is more of like the flourishing, the growth, the
impact.
The impact.
Yeah.
And for a small business owner, a lot of times that translates to dollar signs.
Yeah. Okay.
It's a good question.
Well, thanks. I appreciate it. It was just I was thinking about it, but then when you said it that way, I thought, there must be a distinction in her mind between those two things. And I would like to know what it is.
Yeah, good.
So my plans, for small business, we talk a lot about diversifying the economy in Kokomo. We have a heavy manufacturing base, and we have for a really long time. It's provided lots of jobs and a good tax base, and that's wonderful. And we want to keep it, right? I mean, this is not a discussion about heading away from it. It's a discussion about what can we add to it to make sure that we're not as vulnerable as we have been. So I think that small business is the key to that, especially when we think about job creation. And so what my intent is immediately is let's dedicate one person in the development department of the city to focus on small business and partner with the Economic Development Alliance, et cetera. But it should be completely integrated into our development to make sure that small businesses, this is an environment where small businesses can be successful and prosper. You like that? Prosper.
Good. I like that.
So, yes, both, succeed and prosper. But I don't think we can just stop by saying somebody will be watching it, right? So specifically, what will they be doing? First, I believe in relationships. So, it builds trust, and you can refer to people if you build relationships. I know you're involved with a networking group that does the same thing. So, I think getting out there and knowing them and knowing their needs and being able to make connections, being able to listen and make those connections is, in my experience, one of the most, one of my most valued traits about myself. That is a skill and a tool that I use all the time, is always listening and always trying to make those connections with someone else. So very proactive in getting out there. And then there are a lot of state programs that I think we're not capitalizing on like we could. So minority and women-owned businesses, and how can we support them? How can we get them certified? And then how can we give them opportunities to be a vendor of the city? But you have to be intentional with those things. They don't just happen. You can't just say, we would love to have more business. Like, you can't say that. Nothing works like that. You have to be intentional every day to say, what are we doing? What are we doing? And if you don't have that goal written, if you are not tracking to that, then you're never gonna meet it. The other thing is about the Emerging Business Revolving Loan Fund. So when you were starting, did you hear anything about this? This is a thing. This is not new.
Emerging Business
I've never heard
Revolving
those
Loan
words
Fund.
together.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. I've heard them separately.
Do you think I just made them up? So no, it is actually, it's a fund that helps with, startups with loans. It's like gap financing kind of. So if you're looking to launch a business, and you have, gotten the max financing you can privately, and you've tried different things, then this is something that can help fill the gap. So, it's
a
not
loan from the government.
Yeah. It's a loan from the city, and the intent obviously is to pay back, and then it's a self-fulfilling, pot of money that helps, drive small businesses. So, it hasn't been utilized. I mean, that's just the reality. And for whatever reason, I don't know. But in my opinion, a lot of it is just about communication and building relationships. I mean, you know that. That is what this work is about, is you have to be out there every day, building relationships, getting a certain level of trust with people so that, when you say things, they know that you mean it, and who needs things and who doesn't need things. So anyway.
Briefly, you mentioned the chamber and alliance.
Yeah.
I'm learning a lot recently about what that relationship is between the alliance and a city government. Mm-hmm. And it's a partnership type of thing. I think the city looks at the monetary means they give to them as an investment, as well as city officials sit on the board of those things. And especially, I mean, specifically the Visitors Bureau is more intentional probably in like the chamber aspect. But how do you see that relationship between a city government and a chamber of commerce? Because like you mentioned someone on staff in the city doing something that someone at the chamber similarly does. What is that relationship between a city and a chamber in your administration like?
Oh, I like the twist on the end of that in my administration. So I was really originally going to say you can, I think you can see it different ways. So you can see it almost as a vendor. So if the city is funding that organization, then they would see they're kind of purchasing those services in a way. Like you said, you're investing something, you expect the return. But having come from a nonprofit background, you can't do any of this on your own. Like, I mean, there's no one organization that can solve any of these issues that are population level and community wide. So, having a thriving small business network and making sure that we're a community where small businesses can prosper. I mean, I'm going to start using it.
I really like it.
Yeah,
It's a great word.
Every time you hear it, you like it more. That was a good one. You have to be hands-on. So, I mean, we at United Way, we've done this early childhood education work, which 75 and 5, getting 75% of all children entering kindergarten ready by 2022. And we cannot do that on our own. It's not as simple as a program. So to me, knowing it from the nonprofit side of that, from the community organization, the key is not only having board members who serve, not sit, in my subtle distinction.
There's a big distinction.
You serve on a board. You do not sit on a board, because I don't need anybody sitting on a board. You gotta be thinking and strategizing. That's part of what you do. And you also have to fund it. Excuse me. There's a reality to financial needs. And if you want anything done, you got to staff it. So especially in a networking kind of thing, you've got to put money behind it. But you also need to integrate that into the way that you do business as a city. So whether that is for early childhood education or for small business development, you cannot just depend on an outside vendor to do that. You have to always be filtering that thought, that intentional thought about what are we doing for small businesses today? How are we creating a community where they can thrive and start up and grow and succeed? It has to be part of your daily work. So that's why I think it's so important to have someone specifically dedicated to it. It doesn't replace the work of the Chamber or the Alliance or the Visitors Bureau. It augments it and makes sure that the work that this collaborative group is doing is actually being executed within the mayor's office.
What are some specific things you'd like to see a Chamber of Commerce doing? Maybe they're already doing them, but like to enhance and help out a small business community, what are some major roles you see a chamber doing and that the city might want to partner up with them doing?
Well, I think investment opportunities, right? I mean, and matching them up. My role or my vision of that is more matchmaking. So each of us have our niche markets and talents. Just as small business owners, you have your own networks, but the power comes when you bring those together and you share them. So I would think you're talking about specifically what does the person do in the city, or what do I have?
Well, what are some things a chamber could be doing, or maybe they are doing, or you'd like to see them doing to help support a small business community that maybe the city could also be involved with those things?
I think it's intentional connections. It's not just hosting a networking event and letting anything happen, which is it's on us, right? Yeah. I mean, hosting the event, bringing people together, but really getting to know each business or potential entrepreneur and knowing what their vision is and then matching it with the needs that they have. So, going back to why am I running for mayor, it's constant listening and saying, we have all these tools. Nobody's putting them together. This is the gap that I see and the connections that need to be made. So I would say the same thing for the Alliance and the Chamber and kind of the community in general in terms of small businesses is who is filling in the gaps, who's really doing the listening and knowing exactly what you need to make your business successful and putting you intentionally in the same room as people who can help you.
So being intentional about setting up moments or meetings where if somebody's interested in starting a small business, they come to City Hall and set up a meeting for that, or use the chamber to set up that meeting and actually have that moment to listen and see if this is something the city's really interested, or they see the vision well, and then maybe through loans or through grants, that type of thing, and help them go.
Sure. But one distinction, doors of City Hall always open, right? Open door policy, but you have to go to where the people are. You can't just open doors and expect that they'll know that those things are there. There are several resources we've already talked about that.
Yeah, like the loan.
The loan, like it's
about,
there, but you can't just sit and wait for people to come to you. So where are small business owners right now? Where are potential entrepreneurs? Go out there, go to them, and intentionally get in front of them and let them know the resources that you have.
Yeah.
You can't drive it unless you actually get out there.
Because there's a phrase that small business is the backbone of a community.
Right.
And like I don't want to.
Do you know that?
Did you really?
Yeah, I Googled it. Well, because it's a thing, right?
Yeah,
and the question is like, is it really?
Well,
it's a debate.
I don't want to say and be negative, but like I don't know if that's actually true in Kokomo because of like the number of large organizations we have. In my head, it's a much safer place to be if that statement is actually true.
Yes. So a couple of things in my research on are small businesses really the backbone of
Which
an
I've always
economy?
heard overall in America. I believe that's true. But in our community, I don't know if it is.
Well, I mean, we always think we're super special, right? But we're not really. Yeah. Like we're just like other communities in America. So, from the top of my head, which trying to remember exactly what they said, in terms of the number of employees, like no way. I mean, large companies far outweigh that.
And were we talking about America or?
No, yes, economically.
All over,
yes.
okay.
However, the number of businesses and the more small businesses you have and the more they grow, that is what creates a more diversified economy, and that's the true backbone.
That's an easy thing to achieve.
Right. Yeah.
The more small businesses than large businesses.
Yeah. So, I mean, what I have found consistently with community-based work, whether it's social and human services or now getting into government, it's hard. I mean, okay, there's no easy fix. Like you can't come in and make sweeping statements about we're going to do this thing and then it's going to be easy. No, it is one on one.
Yeah.
Excuse me. So United Way has a very old business model that it's very successful for a very long time, but if, the world changed and it's been very slow to change and catch up. So, you can't just go into a company anymore and say, we're United Way, yay, give to us. I mean, you can't do that. It is person by person having a life-changing experience with, volunteering in their community and then investing. But they invest and they expect a return on that investment, in community change or in the experience that they get as a volunteer. So, it's harder. And it's more successful and it's more sustainable.
It's really interesting. It's like
do
parenting.
The hard work. Yeah.
It's like parenting to me. I feel like the older my kids get, some things get easier. And then at the exact same time, some things get so much harder. And that's kind of like our world right now.
Yes.
With technology and like this massive switch we've had, a lot of things have gotten a lot of easier. A lot of things are automated. A lot of things take a lot of less time. However, what you're saying, so many other things due to information and the ease of information, convincing someone to buy something or convincing someone to donate something is so much harder.
Yeah. Because they have so many options.
The action of buying and the action of donating is so much easier than it's ever actually been, but the convincing and the sales of that is so much harder.
And everyone expects, as they kind of should, because that's what we've got, a personalized experience. They want that. They want it tailored. I mean, even the way that we, are online, like all of the ads are targeted specifically to us. So why would they not expect that? Of course they would expect that. And so you have to get in that space and just accept that it's a lot harder, whether it should be or not. Who cares? That's the reality that we're dealing with is right now. My mom works for an independent bookseller. So I have, my parents are divorced. I have my parents are my dad and my stepmom, and then my mom is my mom. I don't know why. I just kind of call them that. So that's what my mom does. And, she absolutely hates Amazon and talks all the time about Amazon. It's, the death of the world. And, I get it. But she always uses these, arguments that are like, you should spend the extra few dollars. And I don't actually get in this argument with her very often because it's, goes nowhere. But my contention is it's the convenience. It's not, I'll pay $2 extra for the book. That's not the problem. It's that I can get it right to my door, and I'm so busy, and my time is valuable, and so it's just difficult to make that kind of jump. It's not the money, it's the convenience, and so if we can to your point, you can have meetings, but if you don't have someone going to you and intentionally getting in your face and saying, how can I help you? You don't have time to go to a meeting, right? But if you don't, then you don't know about it. And so you have to be proactive.
Yeah. Cause I mean,
right out there.
This conversation will be different in 5 years,
right.
And like these choices and programs that sound amazing right now may be horrible ideas in 5 years because of how fast things are changing.
All of our ideas will stay and be wonderful, obviously.
It's how it works.
Yeah.
Small Success Podcast, folks.
Yes. I mean, it's the headphones.
We're evergreen. Everything we say will never be wrong.
Oh, that term, evergreen. So fun, isn't it?
I like it.
It is.
Thanks to he put it in a song about, like his love for
Ed Sheeran.
Ed Sheeran.
Yeah.
Evergreen. Yeah. That was the first time I've sang on the podcast.
I was here for that moment. Oh, yeah. So
the Enneagram 3 of me just wants to sing more now.
You know, to Drew's credit, you have a lovely voice. That really was.
I've never heard it.
Oh.
This is not your platform. Maybe another podcast.
Did you see how proactive
you just challenged me to make this.
No, that was Pam getting right in there and guiding you gently to not sing right now.
This is why she's here.
This is Abbie's podcast.
That's right.
Yeah.
Can we get back to the point?
That's right.
Oh, yeah.
So,
what?
I'm glad you said that. So thinking about small businesses, I want to talk a little bit more about the owners themselves. Mm-hmm. So I'd love to hear your thoughts. What makes small business owners, entrepreneurs special? How do they bring value to a community, specifically Kokomo? Yeah.
It sounds like this is actually a little bit more about you guys than it is about me. But
we just want you to talk about it.
Right. You guys are so special.
It's the headphones.
Absolutely. So, when I talked about my dad and those characteristics, it is a massive amount of risk. And I think people underestimate, the toll that takes on a person. So simultaneously his hair, which I have the same hair, started going white. Right around 1994 when he started his own business. And so I calculated wait, how old am I? Oh man. So anyway, it is a lot of risk and I'm going to write down a word so I can remember to say it because that's the one that he always uses and I like it. So hardworking. You really do work hard. If you're successful, if you're not successful, then it's probably because, could have not worked as hard. So it requires an exorbitant amount of work. And then, so the word that I was going to say is burden. It's the one that he always feels like, you got to feel the burden, that sense of responsibility, that it is up to me. I am it at the end of the day. And if I don't get this done, then it won't get done. And so if you are not willing to stand up and take that level of accountability, not only for your own work or for your family or for your employees, then it's not going to work. So I think feeling that burden and being able to bear it and move forward positively is probably what makes people most special. Did I almost make you cry?
It's good.
No.
Drew, poor Drew. He's tearing up. I'm just kidding. He's really not. That's
Drew,
not true.
It's okay. Do you need to take a break?
No, it's just the word burden is terrifying. So as the owner in the room, yeah, she's right.
Yeah. Well, call it like it is, right? Yeah. And if you're not willing to do that, then you really probably shouldn't be an entrepreneur. That's it.
I'm a believer that it's a DNA thing too. Some people are just made to look at it and not think of it in a scary way as rather like a positive and what could happen
an opportunity, right? A growth mindset.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's a DNA. Not saying you can only be an entrepreneur if your parents were an entrepreneur.
Yeah. Oh,
but
right. Yeah.
I think it's a thing.
Yeah. Innate to you for whatever reason.
Yeah. Whatever.
Yeah. I agree. And I think you have to be creative in all of those things, like I said, but I do think it's if you don't freak out a couple of times, then you're probably, not really getting it. You got to freak out. You got to have a couple of
freaking out shows that you actually care.
Right.
There's a lot of people that
you're it.
we work with a lot of small business owners, so I talk to them a lot, and some of the situations they're in, I lose sleep over it. If that was my business, and then I talk to them and they're like, yeah, whatever. I'm like,
I'm fine.
You should be scared. You should be nervous. You should probably, and then immediately I just think of that, you just don't care enough.
Right.
You're not well mentally in the place that you're at owning this business. So yeah,
is that what you tell them?
No, in my head.
Right. No. You're not well.
Maybe I've told a few that. Yeah, you good, bro? You need a vacation or something.
Do you need me to sing you a song? Yeah, I have a lovely voice. Nope.
So,
I noticed that. Slip it in there.
Yeah.
So, thinking about Kokomo, what are some of your hopes and dreams for the economy of Kokomo specifically? And how would you say, or how do you see small businesses kind of fitting into those dreams?
So that's a great question. I think that a lot of our issues kind of boil down to financial stability. So I've walked 177 and a half miles of our lovely city, canvassing door to door. And once I get into the conversation with people, what I see a lot is fear. And I think it's fear of the unknown, fear of change. I talk to a lot of people about, they're retired and I mean, quite honestly, it sounds morbid, but they're afraid they're going to run out of money before they die, right? So they planned for retirement, and the world has changed. They're living longer, which is wonderful, but that comes with a cost if you retired at a certain age.
Sure.
And then, or they're within 2 to 3 years of retirement, and they're nervous that their job won't be there or the game will change before they get to retire. And then, people younger than that, kind of what I see is just I don't know if I'll have a job. I don't know what will happen. And so what I don't want people to be afraid, right? I want to make sure that Kokomo is a place where people feel like they know that they can have a job and they have the skills that if that job doesn't work out, they can get another job, and that those opportunities are there. So I think that is, when you think of hopes and dreams, that I want every family to be financially stable. That's a hope and a dream, right? It may not be the goal, because the reality is, we have a 17% poverty rate. And when you add a subset on top of that called ALICE, asset limited, income constrained, but employed. So they don't own and they rent. They don't have a retirement, income constrained. They work a part-time job that's hourly. So if they don't get the hours, then they don't get paid. Or if their kid gets sick, they have to take time off. They don't get paid.
Sure.
But they are employed. So, they're working. They may not qualify for help. So, and that gets us, in the city of Kokomo, gets us close to 46% of working families.
Okay.
So that's a lot of people who are not making it. And our unemployment rate is very low. So to me, that is, that's a challenge, to make sure that people have the skills that they need to get the jobs that will pay the bills. So, I want a workforce that's skilled and prepared for whatever comes, down the pike. So does that answer my hopes and dreams?
I mean, the obvious follow-up is how.
Oh, that's neat. Yes. I actually have a plan for that. So we're never going to make the numbers that we need with high school graduates. So 50% of our workforce will be eligible to retire in the next 2 to 3 years. And while we've always had a skilled workforce. That's been one of our biggest assets in Kokomo, is that we have the people that can do the job. But we're 2 to 3 years away from potentially having that halved, and we simply won't meet that next. We won't meet that need with high school graduates in the time frame that we need it. So I think the easy answer that people go to a lot is career technical education and K through 12. Wonderful. We're doing that. We have a wonderful Kokomo Area Career Center. They do great work. We've got Ivy Tech doing innovative things with high school students, and add up the numbers. Like, we will never get there in our 8-county region with in the time frame we need to. So you must do the hard work of skilling up adults. So that is the challenge of, someone working 2 part-time jobs who can't afford to take time off because to go to school or to take any kind of class.
Sure.
Because they have to pay the bills. And even if they can't afford childcare because it's insanely expensive. You have 2 small children, right? Like, this is expensive stuff. It's a barrier to many, many people who could be in the workforce who aren't. So I do think it's a comprehensive wraparound, including social services programming, to get adults skilled up and in job training programs. So what that really means is, a 90-day pre-apprenticeship program. So we stabilize people for 90 days and figure out how do we make sure that they make it through that 90 days where they're having to take one of their part-time jobs off, and then we connect them with childcare, make sure their housing is stable, and then skill them up all the way till they can actually, get the job. People are hiring. It's just, the people who need the jobs do not have access to that. And, with childcare, even to get childcare assistance, there's a waiting list right now, and you have to have a job to be able to qualify for the assistance. So you go get a job, and then there's a waiting list, and then the job goes. So, it's maddening to me to be involved in social services and have all of these programs available to people, but no one is putting the pieces together to say, this isn't work and this is why. Your criteria are too narrow. With On My Way Pre-K, it's an awesome program. But I mean, the sliver of families who are eligible for that is so small that we're not solving anything. So I think it is bringing people to the table. Is what I hope to do as mayor, is have that leverage to say, let's sit down and talk about how this actually works for families. Right now I have a friend who works for FSSA as an attorney, and I'll talk about these things. She's like, oh, FSSA has that program. I'm like, yeah, that's not how it works on the outside. Like, I mean, that's just not how it works. So, the other thing is with childcare providers, to open up more spots or open up another classroom, they have to pay a whole teacher or two because of, safety,
regulations.
Yes,
stuff,
thank you. But they can't unless they have 20 kids enrolled. And so when are you going to get 20 kids at the exact same time that the parents' jobs lined up at the exact same moment, and the waiting list, they were at the top of it at the exact same moment.
Right.
And so we just don't have
it's the chicken before, I've seen that, like our childcare, it's the chicken before the egg.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, I think sitting down and saying, okay, how are we really going to solve this problem? And pretending like one program gets it done is just silly. It just doesn't. So that, honestly, that's the reason why I'm running. And that's where I want to spend most of my time, is in this, job training for adults and doing that hard work, because I think that's what will make the biggest difference for our economy long term. I mean, if families are financially stable and they aren't asset limited, if they have savings, if they own their home, they're growing their wealth and not spinning their wheels. And when people spin their wheels, it's very difficult to have the hope to face forward and make a good decision in the short term that will have good consequences in the long term. But it's hard. And people are human, right? We have brains. Like, you can't pretend like it's not stressful. You were talking about effects of stress, physical effects of stress on you earlier, Drew. And that's just how humans are built. We can only withstand what we can withstand. And at some point our bodies will give. So it's a lot of stress to put on people. They're carrying around a lot. And in my opinion, being able to pay the bills and take care of their families faces them forward. And then we start.
A few questions, like following up with this idea, because I agree.
Are you intrigued?
I am, but now it's the implementation aspect of it. So, I mean, what I'm hearing is I hate the word because it makes it sound generic, but like a program-ish type of thing where we're helping people in our community be more qualified for certain things, job training. In my head, it's similar to what this organization in our community called Turning Point is doing for people that are struggling with like this opioid, like horrible thing going on in our whole country. But we have this organization in town called Turning Point, where if you are suffering from that and you have no idea where to start, you go to Turning Point and they push you in the right direction. In my head, this is a turning point for like jobs and like people that maybe have questions about employment. That come here like, all right, here's the thing. I've worked here for forever, worried about retirement or younger, where do I go? Is that similar kind of, or cause how would the implementation, cause it's also the question we were talking about. It's just a program similar to like that loan we were talking about from the government. Like the city has to go to the people and not just expect the people to come to the city. So where's that hurdle with this type of plan?
So it has to be bigger than a program, right? It has to be I
hated calling it a program.
Yeah, it's okay,
but I don't know the other word.
Like, what is the other initiative, right? I mean, we have to accept the truth of the current skills of our workforce and what we're about to lose, right? We have a retiree bubble about to burst, so that is a thing. Yeah. And talking about it doesn't make it true. Talking about it is a basis for us to go forward. So Turning Point is great and it is similar, but, I would go way beyond that to a much bigger initiative. So it's not information and referral. So it's not hey, I need to know where to go and then here's where you go. There is some support in connecting to that service. And we do something similar at United Way, but it's much bigger than a referral or even assistance connecting. You really need someone to walk you all the way through that. And that's what we're finding at United Way with a program called Mission United with veterans. There are all kinds of resources for veterans or people who've served in the military, but it's very hard to connect and it's very hard to keep going. You need that assistance to kind of walk you through it because every time you've turned around and tried to connect with something, you've hit a barrier. So you need somebody standing behind you or beside you to make sure you bust through that barrier. It's kind of like when you go to the doctor and you go by yourself and you have no idea what the doctor said. Like you have to have somebody there who is actually making sure, okay, this is what they said. Because you're the person in crisis and you're not, your brain's not functioning the way that you would want it to, right? You're not. And so there are actually really successful models. There's one in Milwaukee called Big Step, and it works the same way. So and pretending like this is going to get massive amounts of people all at once is just silly. Like it's not. It is one family by one family saying, okay, what are your needs? We have lots of resources in this community. We just have to put them together. And that's really the tough part of any kind of program, because no program will work in isolation. You have to have cross communication. So does that answer your question a little bit?
Yeah, kind of. It's just, it's a big thing.
It's very big.
It's a big thing. So I'm not expecting
it's
a
17-point
implementation
a mayor
plan.
Behind it, right?
Almost.
Like
yeah.
it's almost
Honestly,
like you would have to
more
have
than a
the
mayor.
full force of a city who can leverage resources to make sure we can bring people to the table and fight the state when necessary and thank the state when necessary and have a good working relationship. So
it's good.
and I'm not afraid. Like that's the thing. I think people inadvertently throw up the barriers, right? Like, how could that work? What about this and this and this and this? I'm like, well, okay, let's start solving each one of them. What about that? I know, let's find a solution. You have to approach this with, the principles of design thinking in mind. So are you approaching things with, solutions, or are you going to approach them with all the barriers? You have a choice.
Yeah.
Which one you want to do. I like to approach things with solutions.
Another thing I find possible interesting about our community specifically, and this is a topic I brought up with the other candidate when we did a podcast with him as well, is the idea of just comfort in our community. I feel like Kokomo is a community, and I don't think we're in any way alone on this. I feel like there's a lot of communities in our country that are like this as well, where a main priority sociologically for us is the idea of comfort, because back in the day of Kokomo, the heyday of Kokomo, everyone had a great job. Everyone got paid well. Everyone had no issue majority of people, worked at Chrysler or a factory, and they got to go to Florida twice a year, live that American dream. And then 2008 happened and shook us, right? And we fought back extremely hard during 2008. I said we showed up on that list of like fastest dying city. And a few years later, we showed up on the opposite list of, fastest growing, city in America. So during hard times, we're good with the uncomfortable. I feel like
with
during
chaos,
really hard times, we're really good, with the uncomfortable. However, something that blows my mind is little things of progress, little things of change that push a little bit of uncomfortableness. People in our community really struggle with any type of change. I don't know why, but I see it as a big attitude problem in our community of any type of change outside of what is the norm, is a big deal, and a lot of negativity comes out of that. What can we do about that? What can we do?
Just a little question for you.
But it's a big question.
Yeah.
To me, it's extremely important.
I'll tell you
As
how we can deal
someone,
with it.
a small business entrepreneur, growing, especially in the world industry we're in, young talent is an extremely important thing to us. People coming out of college, bright, young adults coming in. An attitude of a city, a culture of a city is a very big deal to young professionals. I'm worried that uncomfortable or, negativity towards uncomfort and change could potentially push people away that our city desperately needs. So it's a big issue from a government entity, or to me, it's a whole community effort, but you have to convince the community that is the problem, that they need to fix the problem.
It usually works really well when you're like, you're the problem. Can you fix yourself? Yeah.
But that's my question. It's a big thing for me, is the attitude of Kokomo and how to change that in the future, towards something more, it's not just like quit being negative, because negative, there's a place for negative when things are going wrong, but to change that idea that uncomfort is a good thing, change is a good thing, progress is a good thing.
So,
give me a second.
Okay, I'm ready.
Yeah. Is that fair, how I place this question similar to the other one? Okay. I want to be fair.
Unfair. Oh, is this the big trick question?
Yeah, this is the topic. This is not a trick question. It's a very important question.
So,
I just want to make sure I poise
no.
that to you the same way I did the other candidate.
So, okay, the question was how do we, the discomfort is a good thing, right? Like the
mindset of a city.
Change,
yeah.
So a couple of things. One, oh gosh, kind of get over it. Is that a little bit? Like, is that too harsh? The reality is that's the human condition. And that's what we're like. I mean, have you ever, had someone that you lived with, change the place where you keep the toothpaste? I mean, you ever move an electrical outlet and the light switch isn't there anymore? I mean, that is just a constant frustration. It's small. It's not that big a deal. You probably actually is better where it is now, but it's still annoying. And that's just kind of the reality of the human condition. Small changes can sometimes be more annoying than big changes, because a lot of times big changes are made out of necessity. So I would contend that the experience in Kokomo from comfort through change to discomfort has not been easy for people, and it's usually born out of something really bad. So you went back to 2008, but really you can go back to 2000, 2001. A lot of people had the game changed on them in that time frame. So pensions were gone and jobs were lost, and it was a very big deal. So that's a hard change, and they're really uncomfortable with that. But they survived. And so that's what I think sometimes makes us, you said in times of like, true.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, even in that time.
True hardship.
Well, that's what drives me nuts. I'm like, we survive tornadoes that like devastate our city and our homes.
But that's a different part of your brain, right? In those times, you are absolutely in a survival mode. So whether it is a natural disaster, you have flipped into survive, and that is a human basic instinct that I'm going to survive this. I'm going to do what I got to do to survive it. Changing the light switch from the inside of the room to the outside of the room, that does not take a survival mindset. So you are in a completely different headspace than you are when you're trying to survive. I mean, it's this phoenix rising from the ashes type of mindset that like, okay, things are bad, but we're going to come back. And so there's something that drives that innately in us as humans, that we can survive. So the other thing I would contend is,
so your first was get over it.
Okay. It's the way that humans work. Good, yeah. I mean, we can bemoan it, which is kind of negative if you ask me, or we can say, cool, okay, people are upset by this. Let's deal with this reality and figure out what are we going to do about it. Which I think then when you flip that switch, there are lots of things to do about it. I think about potholes all the time. It's maybe a dumb idea, but it's never stopped me before from saying it, because what's that little show? You guys might know. It's on the Disney Channel, and it's what are they called? But they sing a song about there's no bad ideas when you're brainstorming.
Yes.
And it's this little
yes.
I'm not gonna sing it. I'm gonna leave that to Drew. But
we're a Netflix fan.
Yeah. But it's this, that's the idea. That's what a brainstorm is. I mean, you just say things. So I think about potholes and how frustrating those are. Well, I mean, have you ever used the Waze app? Like, report them. Like, I mean, that's the whole point of that, is that we get together and we say, here's a pothole, there's an accident up here. And it's this crowd involvement that makes the whole better. So things like that, I think you can start to get creative about what is it that they don't like, and how can we help make that better? So yeah, get over it and then get to work is my contention there. Number one. Sorry, Drew. And
that's my attitude towar's a lot of things in my life. And then my wife tells me like, that's mean.
Yeah.
Well, there's no other option.
Right. I mean, that's just, I've been managing employees for a while now, and that's what management is about. Like, maybe they should be doing this or they shouldn't be doing this, but they are or they aren't. And so that's the reality that we deal with, and we go from there. So, pretending like things should be a different way. Cool. Well, they're not. So what are we going to do? So that's my number one answer. Yeah, get over it. The number two, I think that what is missing from times of comfort with I want to say minuscule because they don't feel minuscule to some people, but what's missing from times of comfort is this benchmark. So when you are in, when we have a tornado, the clear benchmark is recovery.
Sure.
So we want every person who was affected to be facing forward, whatever that means for them. It doesn't mean it was going to be the way it was, because that's impossible. But it does mean we have this many homes affected and we have this many people to help and face forward. Very clear goals, very clear benchmarks. We can meet those. And, bankruptcy of our largest employer. The metric is survive. Right. They need to not be bankrupt. Like, how do we make this happen? And that's the goal. It's very clear. We need to put more people to work. And people can come around that and share their different gifts and their different, resources to make that thing happen. But that's what's missing in times of comfort, is that benchmark. What does the next thing look like? So nobody knows why we're doing any of these things if we don't clearly define what we're all trying to do and then socialize it to try to get people on board.
It's very President Bartlett of you.
Thank you.
What's next? It's a West Wing reference.
I'm behind.
I wish, right? Behind.
No,
Have you started at all?
20 years behind, man.
No, we have to. We're finishing Breaking Bad.
Yeah, you need to. Don't take a break.
I know.
Yeah,
I
you
know.
just power right through.
Yeah.
I mean, the benchmark is watch all the episodes.
Yeah,
you can
right.
meet it.
Got it.
Yeah,
So
I guess
anyway,
it's one of those things. I love my city. Obviously I could have started this business. I could have started my family anywhere, and I chose this place. I love this place. Just the attitude, the overall, and maybe it's where I just put myself and I pay attention way too much to stuff I shouldn't pay attention to. But it just, my mind is constantly blown how we can have that amazing community attitude of better and change and repair and massive error things that are happening. Like you said, our largest employer going bankrupt, or tornadoes happening multiple times, and the flood that all of that. Oh, yeah. We there's no place like Kokomo in my head when those type of things are happening. I mean, Kokomo Strong is literal. It's not just a hashtag.
right.
And then if there's a pothole, or if there's, any type of minor change that is happening through just science, data, and technology, we have a really big issue with it. And it just drives me crazy.
So these three things that a mayor is responsible for: infrastructure, public safety, and economic development. I think what people's daily frustration is driving on roads that are inconvenient to them. And so that is, whether they're good or bad, or they're changing or whatever, it is a daily manifestation of something that's not working for them. And so it's a lot easier to conceptualize that, and it should be solvable, right? I mean, and I think that's the difference. If we can recover from 2 tornadoes, a flood, bankruptcy of our largest employer, on and on and on, then we should be able to fill the potholes. And I think that's where their frustration lies, is in the small things. I mean, that's just, again, that's the human condition. So, let's just fix it.
Yeah.
The reason I wanted to bring this up after your discussion of the job training and all those initiatives, in my head, I see some of that maybe mid-age workforce in Kokomo being against no, I've already been trained. Why do I need more training? And that's an uncomfortable thing for them, having to be retrained.
Of course.
So that's another thing with that, convincing them, this will help you. This isn't just some extra school, or something like that. I could see that being interesting and a hurdle as well.
Yeah.
And that's
those 40 to 50, not that group that's ready to retire now, because good luck getting them. They're not going to do it. But that 40,
why should they,
30,
right?
yeah, exactly. Yeah. 35 to 50 range people, I could see this being interesting for that, convincing them that this is a thing that's needed to move along. This will move you along. This will move our city along. That's the selling to them is interesting.
It's going to sound like cliche. I know it is, or trite, but I have said to many people over the last 2 years now, I guess, because we're almost at the end of, in my book, we're almost at the end of 2019. It's been a bit of a warp speed year, but, there is something I'm learning over the last years, 36, 37. I'm now 38. And I have said, I don't know what it is, but I am learning something, and it's frustrating and it's hard and all of that. So I say that to say that makes you a leader, Drew. And what are you going to do about it? Are you going to complain? And are you going to observe? And are we going to stay passive and kind of in the back seat and watching things? Or are you going to get in the driver's seat Are you going to lead? Are you going to step up and say, look, if I'm seeing these things and I know people need it and I know it's hard and I empathize with you on that, but how can I help you see that this is going to be helpful and this is going to help you go forward? And I think that's that call to leadership that I've been, I have more to give. And so what are you going to do about it, Abbie? And then this opportunity came up. And so, yeah, it'll be really hard.
We talk a lot on the podcast of the idea of, like, I define.
Okay, so let's not do it.
Yeah.
Not an option.
Yeah.
Sorry. Too many people out there.
I define maturity as someone that consciously makes decisions today that will not be worth it for tomorrow or something. Like make a decision
that's
today.
Going to outlast you.
That'll outlast you, or make a decision today that will better you tomorrow. You're not going to get it immediately.
Right.
So, I mean, it's a part of that as what we're talking about in this job training as well. Like you're going to have to do some extra work now that will benefit you later.
And it is on us to convince people that it will be worth it, because the history has shown that it hasn't been. Like in Kokomo with our manufacturing jobs, the deal has been changed on people a lot of times. Yeah. So what is true and what is experientially true to them is I entered this thing and I was going to do this thing and then this was going to happen and it didn't. And so they're not wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not wrong in that.
We're talking about this job training thing a lot, but it's a big thing for you. I know. Going back to small businesses, because a lot of what I'm hearing is maybe job training for a factory job or job training for a large business. What would this job training initiative do for our small business community as well? In anything in the realm, in my head, I'm hearing a lot for large businesses training and more factory training or more technology, whatever that is. What do you see this doing for our small business community to maybe get to that point where the small business community is our actual backbone?
Right. So a couple of things. That there is a reality to the jobs in Kokomo and where they are. So again, it is about maintaining those jobs because we need a skilled workforce to keep them because those are customers of small businesses. So that's the first answer. But then the question is, what do we do alongside that to make sure this doesn't happen to us again? Excuse me. And I think that remembering that small businesses don't all look alike. So growing industries like home health care, that's projected to get something like 500 jobs in the next 10 years in the state of Indiana. So we know we need that. I mean, people are aging. They have to have those
especially
resources.
Our community. We have a large percentage of our population that is going to be in need of that.
Right.
Yeah.
So that is a small business as well. I mean, we have small businesses that provide those services. So they need the skilled workforce to do those jobs. And then you go into healthcare in general and hospitals. There are lots and lots of jobs within hospitals that do pay well. That's only going to increase in the next few years. That's the sector that's projected to grow. So then what are all of those ancillary businesses that drive that? So it's not all small businesses are communication related. Some of them are providing services or doing things that need a skilled workforce beyond high school. So that's the other thing that we're talking about. It's not just a college degree. I mean, it is anything after high school. You need more than a high school education, some kind of technical training or an associate's degree or a bachelor's degree.
This is a big thing.
Yes,
because you bring up the topic of like different industries. I mean, this initiative has so many different subcategories of the training, like healthcare, manufacturing. I mean, all the
home
different
service,
of that, like these different segments. Yeah, good luck.
Thanks.
That's a job.
Yeah. Did you expect that answer? Yeah. I feel like when I answer it, you're like, oh man.
I don't know what to answer to. It's that big of a thing to me.
Question.
And if we're not talking about it, I genuinely feel like I'm the only one talking about it.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm not because I've heard it somewhere but somebody has to drive it in Kokomo.
Well, you had to hear it from somewhere.
And if not the mayor, then who, right? So, I mean, this is one of the biggest economic development issues that we have right now. And so.
Especially, I mean, you're saying in 2 years, 50% of our workforce could retire in 2 years.
Yeah. So that doesn't mean they will, but they could.
Sure.
They could. Yeah.
So that's you saying that. I'm like, yeah, I'm kind of having a light bulb
How
moment.
many people do you know?
It's not surprising to me, but that thought is a new thought to me, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And actually it leads really well into the next thing I want to ask you about, which is kind of, so we have this.
This is a perfect transition.
I know.
The next question is,
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So we have this big part of the population potentially at some point leaving the workforce. And now we have the millennials who are integrated. And then we have Gen Z coming up. What do you see in Kokomo, and how can we encourage more young entrepreneurs to maybe attract them to Kokomo or to keep them here, to encourage them to stay, specifically millennials and Gen Z? And keep in mind, this is a millennial small business owner sitting right here in the room.
So I just want to say that I am the eldest of the millennials. So depending on where you cut that, I'm either the oldest or the youngest. So I get it, and I feel both Gen X and millennial.
Going for the first female mayor of Kokomo, as well as the first millennial mayor of Kokomo.
That's exciting.
Yeah, would be.
So much glass breaking. It's amazing.
Well, and Gen Z, that cutoff was the people born in the year 2000.
Gen Z, they say, is the last generation or the first generation to never remember life without the internet. That's like how they.
So young adults graduating from college right now, they are Gen Z.
Yeah.
So a Gen Z entrepreneur, a millennial entrepreneur, keeping them or attracting them to Kokomo.
Yeah.
Such a good question. Here we are, right? So, what I know about, a couple of different things. What I know about managing millennials and Gen Z, because I've got a couple that I'm managing, they have to see growth. They have to see the future. You have to let them adapt things, because that's where the adapter generation.
They want vision.
So they want to be tapped in and part of something bigger and huge and amazing.
The why.
Yes. And being the adapter generation with millennials specifically, that resonates with me, because there's a lot out there. And so I'm not trying to pretend like we're coming in and inventing things, but innovating and adapting, that's our jam. So let us eat, right? I mean, let us do it. And so I think what people of other generations, because I'm a millennial, but I am the eldest, so I get it, is allow them that flexibility and allow them to tap into something bigger. So I have kept millennial employees longer when I am providing professional development and always, letting them kind of explore different things. There is another side to that, though, with the reality. I have a mentor who told me one time, "You're not in charge and you're being defensive. Stop it. It's annoying." I'm like, oh, I was so mad. And I'm like, oh man. Yeah.
You're mad because they were right.
Yes. But once you kind of, swallow that pill, then you can be a lot more successful in knowing, okay, is this a good argument, or am I just defending what I did? And then be quiet if it's just defending what you did, because there's no sense in that. But so I think we are uniquely qualified as a community to be able to do that if we so choose, to your point, Drew. So we are the city of first, right? We have this innovative spirit, and really capitalizing on this is the place where we innovate and invent and build as well. If we can drive that kind of culture into this community, which we've always had, we just have to tap back into it. Then I think we are uniquely suited for that because of our proximity to Indianapolis. So making sure that's a two-way street, and we're not that far away. And not everybody likes to live in a big city.
We're getting closer and closer.
We
too,
are.
as the area expands.
My husband, as I've studied, works in the fishing industry for a company in Wisconsin that does business in Canada, and so he is an hour door to door from the airport because he flies out early when he has to travel. So we are not that far away. He is on the shuttle heading to the building in an hour. So as that shrinks and that we become more connected with Indy Metro, which in my opinion is the way we need to grow, then this becomes a viable option for a lot of talent who wants to be close enough to a major metropolitan city, but not live there.
Sure.
So if we can make sure that we are tapping into this bigger vision that Kokomo is the place that you come to innovate and do something new, and that we are creating an environment where that is safer than it is somewhere else, or at least the perception, right? So it just has to be you have to be willing to take the risk, and this is the place where we aren't afraid. So
something Pam and I talk about in this topic, I guess, we talk about is the campuses and like universities we have in our community. Ivy Tech is building a brand new, beautiful place. IUK just keeps growing and growing and growing. As like I said, as a Kokomo kid, I'm baffled by the idea that people are moving from Indianapolis to Kokomo to go to IUK for 4 years and live here in a dormitory. It blows my mind as a Kokomo kid. So what do you see? Cause with IUK and with Ivy Tech,
So why? Wait a minute. Why does it blow your mind?
When I was that age, IUK was in no way what it is now.
Right.
So that's why it blows. Like that's even an opportunity is really what blows my mind. That's what blows my mind.
Okay.
Yeah. So
I feel like you're not giving us enough credit.
Well, because when I was that age, there was no credit.
Yeah.
It was a community scholar, mostly night classes. So I'm just saying it's grown immensely.
And were dorms even a reality?
No, not
then?
even, that wasn't even a thought.
Also,
probably.
I should preface, when I say back then, we're talking
like
10 to 15 years ago.
Yeah, but even that fact shows, but even that fact shows how fast IUK it's growing, becoming legit university for people.
Yeah.
Where do you see partnerships from the city and like encouraging, in my head, I love the idea of some sort of entrepreneurship program from the city to, you know, senior business students or entrepreneurial students at those universities. And hey, we love your business idea. Here's a grant. Here's a fund to start it if you do it in Kokomo and further that.
Yeah, I think that's an amazing idea. I think
there's so many opportunities with that.
Right. And again, we kind of go back to programs versus culture. So is that just going to be a program, or is that going to be infused into this culture of innovation and adaptation in Kokomo?
They graduate, and the goal in your mind is they graduate, and in their mind, there is no better place to actually start.
No better place to be. Yeah.
Than right
this
here.
is it. Yeah. Right. And so I think that's the real opportunity that we have, especially being so close. I think about, so I'm like 7 to 10 years older than you are. And so
I'm turning 30 in a few weeks.
Okay. How you doing? It was like one of my best birthdays.
Great.
It's
day to day. Some days I don't care. Some days I'm like, oh, this is a thing.
Cool. Yeah, it's a real thing. It's legit. So I remember when IUPUI was similar to kind of how you were describing IU Kokomo. So I think there's an appetite for something else somewhere in the middle for people, right? They want something bigger, but not too big. And then even watching IUPUI, how that has grown around a city and become its own thing. It's not an alternative to Purdue or to Bloomington anymore. It's IUPUI.
Its own thing.
Yeah. And so I think that is where IU Kokomo is right now. They are their own thing, and they continue to grow, their student body. So that is only opportunity in my mind. That's all I see there is opportunity.
You look at our country in general, I feel like the high end of stuff is growing extremely fast. And when you have that, the low end grows extremely fast as well, leaving a massive opportunity in the middle for a lot of industries, a lot of, ways.
Yep.
Yeah. And I think, what I was going to say, I think in, some point, one of the questions you asked, Pam, was this concept of livable or living wages, right? And I think that scares a lot of small business owners to think, oh my gosh, I'm going to get priced out of employees.
Sure.
But,
the $15 minimum wage, that conversation.
But the thing is, you already are priced out of skilled workforce, right? I mean, you already are. So, retention, speaking of keeping millennials and Gen Zs, I mean, you have to pay them. And, because the job market is so tight right now, because half of us are retiring. So, I mean, that's the reality that we're facing. So again, whether or not people like the sound of it doesn't really matter. It is the reality that we're in, that we are in a very tight market for employers. So to get talent, you're going to have to think, creatively to say, how do we tap into the ethos of who we are as a community, as a business? How do we attract people to that? How do we retain talent through benefits and payment? I mean, people got to live. So, I think incentivizing those types of things too is part of this culture that we've got to create.
Abbie Smith, the reality of the situation doesn't care about your feelings.
That's actually should be my tag.
There you go.
So you know what's really funny is I have been accused sometimes, and perhaps by my husband, of being a bit cold. And I do have this ability to compartmentalize that. I mean, we can feel how we feel about things all day long, and it does not change the reality. So
I'm the opposite in our house. I hear that from Aaron.
Yeah, like it's very accurate. Yes, cool, all those feelings, and
do something about it.
Back to reality now. I mean, that always grounds me in, okay, but where are we, and what are we going to do about it? Yeah. So, I do have feelings, so I feel all my feelings.
And there is.
I don't.
Well, there is.
You feel them through music. We know that now.
Yeah.
Evergreen. They're evergreen feelings.
Well, and there's just totally an outside observation, but it is really interesting because your kind of your life's call, your life's work is to service and people. So in no way am I receiving that as, I don't care.
Yeah,
That's not what it is.
Right.
But it's like, because of the heart for people and service, there is this, okay, so then how do we make it happen?
Everyone needs that tough reality friend to smack you in the face and put you in your place. And, yeah. Well, don't hit people.
Hypothetically.
Right,
Yes.
right.
Okay, so now, Abbie, I'm going to turn the conversation a little bit. I'm going to ask you two questions we ask every guest of the podcast. What is your favorite sandwich?
Most important question of the day.
Number one, my favorite sandwich is a sandwich that someone else made. Number one. But if I had my preference, right, it's a Cuban. I do love me some dill pickles. Like,
okay, describe a Cuban to our listeners who may not be familiar.
Oh, well, it's bread, delicious bread, and ham, and like a mustard, a spicy kind of mustard, but not too spicy. I don't like it too spicy. So my husband likes everything spicy. And dill pickles. There's cheese, right? There's a cheese.
Swiss cheese and pulled pork.
Okay, yeah, there we go. Thank you.
Too. It's also my favorite.
Is it
sandwich.
hot or cold?
Hot.
If it's cold, it's not a Cuban.
We are teetering on lunchtime. That sounds really good.
That's really
okay.
We've got
Half
several
Moon
there,
actually has a great Cuban.
Really?
They do well. Yeah.
Never ordered the Cuban at Half Moon.
Giuliano's has a Cuban, and I think does Main Street have some?
Main Street has a Cubano.
Yeah,
Yeah. A Cubano. Yes, as well.
Noted. We should do like a week of Cubans for lunch one time.
I just read a
killing me.
book Next Year in Havana. I don't know if you've read that. It's very good, and it's about Cuba, and it's a whole thing. It's one of those where the grandmother and the granddaughter that flips back and forth between their stories. I love a book like that. So Next Year in Havana, it's very good. And
Next year in Havana.
I got turned on to the Cuban sandwich from the movie Chef with John Favreau's in it, and it's a story of like he quit this fancy fine dining restaurant and started a food truck
just to go make Cubans all day long.
Oh, he started, but like that was his go-to first thing. And I'm like, I never heard of it. And then I watched the movie and I'm obsessed with it now.
Okay, so
they're very good.
This is kind of our hallmark question, or I'm trying to make it
sandwich
one.
Was it?
No. This final question. Okay. We are the Small Success Podcast. So what I'm interested in, what is one small thing that you do that contributes to your success? And this could be silly. It could be serious. Yeah. It could be, it can't be big. It has to be small.
It has to be small. It can be big.
It could be anything though. Something small that you do on the regular that you would say contributes to your success.
So, this is, I can't decide if this is small or big. My husband would say it's really small and unnecessary, and I think it's revolutionary and has changed my entire life. So I started reading, I don't want to say I started reading again, but in reality I started reading again because you get really busy in life, and I'm a working mom, and who has time to read for pleasure? Well, it turns out I do because it keeps me sane, but that's not the thing. I read a book called The Subtle Art of Giving an Expletive. If you can imagine what that expletive is.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, I don't know. I mean, it was recommended. I'm like, okay, that one. So I read that, and it was just kind of mind blowing that it's not that you don't care about things. It's that you care about some things so much that you simply can't take everything on. And so, I was like, cool, but like how? Because I really do care about a lot of things. And so I need to know how to not, act on or not carry these things around. So I read a book called Getting Things Done, The Art of Stress-Free Productivity by David Allen. He also has a podcast. And what it does is kind of boils down the way that our brains work and helps us plan in cycle and cadence with our actual brain function. So the traditional ways that we plan things are counter to the way that our brain works. And so not to go too far into it, because I can go way far into it, but
it's a small thing.
It's a small thing. It's the concept that your brain has lots of open thoughts all the time. So and they're stuck in your short-term memory. So like a computer, you can look at the screen and see 2 or 3 windows at the same time. You can in your brain you can experience and consciously think of 2 or 3 thoughts at the same time. But the reality is everything that's going on behind the scenes is really what's driving your brain. And if you get too many of those programs open, your computer gets slow, and that's really the stress in your life. So what I do now is I keep 3. So the key is to close those loops. Even deciding not to decide something is a decision, and so it closes it in your brain. Yeah. Your short-term memory has no sense of future or past. It thinks that everything needs to be done right now. So when you're in the shower and a thought pops into your head, you can do nothing about it. and then you forget it again, right? You've had that happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the small thing I do is I keep 3 lists: next actions, waiting for, and someday maybe. So my next actions list are the literal things that I need to do next. And I mean, I get literal,
like today.
No, not necessarily today,
Okay.
just as soon as they need to be done. But I will not allow a word that's not a verb to start that list. So it's not groceries. Groceries is not a thing to do. It's just a noun. It's just groceries. What do you need to do? Do you need to buy? Well, do you need to buy? When are you going to go? Do you have a list? It's not the next thing. You have to literally write the next action. So we undervalue the thinking work involved in our lives. So, next actions, and then waiting for, because as a manager, I cause things to be done. So I ask people to do a lot of things, and then I forget that I asked them, and then all of a sudden I'm saving it and doing it myself at the end of it. And that's not fair to them. It's not fair to me. So again, to your point, they should have done it. Cool. They didn't. Here I am. Mm-hmm. What can I do to make sure that gets done next time? So it is always tracking what's on my waiting for list. If I ask someone to do it, it goes on my waiting for list.
Managing processes, basically.
Right. And then the someday maybe list is anything that's not actionable this week. I actually used to have mayoral run on my someday maybe list, and one fateful week this January that became actionable. So the next action was set up a Facebook event because you're going to announce that you're going to run for mayor. So I also have that next to crochet my sunroom pillows. Not going to do that this week, but I'd like to someday. So maybe. So these 3 lists, it's just this small thing of getting your brain external and just giving yourself a little bit of breathing space.
That's great. I'm thinking for small business owners, that's a really great takeaway. Do you physically write those down? Mm-hmm. You keep them in your phone?
I got my book right here. No. You can. I mean, I find the process of writing things cathartic. Yeah. So, it kind of does a little bit of self-care, and it's also, they're right here. Like I'm going to email these people about this thing, and then I'm waiting for these things from that person.
Pam's face is just shocking right now.
Yeah. Abbie,
this is bullet journaling? Is that what you do?
This is bullet journaling, so that's my someday maybe list, and this is personal, and that's professional. So,
I love this. This is a really great takeaway.
For
me personally, thank you. But I'm also thinking small business owners, this could be a really great tool.
There are a bajillion tools online to, just Google GTD, and you could even Pinterest and all of that kind of stuff. GTD, getting things done.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So that concept came from that book.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good.
Yeah. And then, you can have a list. It doesn't have to make it. You don't have to make it pretty. It's just I like to.
Aaron loves
That's a small thing.
Yeah. I mean, it's
towards your success.
it is. It's just keep the list outside your head. There's no reason for you to be walking around thinking about crocheting sunroom pillows.
Yeah.
There's no need.
That's right. Okay. Well, Small Success Podcast listeners, we are so glad you joined us for this conversation. I hope you have some valuable takeaways. We hope you'll continue listening. At this point, we're really going to transition the conversation to really focus in on Kokomo. We have some questions for Abbie about her hopes and dreams for possibly the future mayor of Kokomo. And so we're going to dig into those. So like I said, hope you stick around with us, but if not, we will see you next time. So Abbie, we reached out to our online community and we picked up on 3 general topics that we want to get your thoughts on. Of course, specifically thinking about the mayoral run for the city of Kokomo. And then we also chose 3 specific questions from voters. So I'm just going to read those to you verbatim. I'll tell you who asked them. So we'll start with the first general topic. The roads in Kokomo.
Okay, so I'm responding to this general topic, right?
Yes.
So my basic infrastructure plan is one. I don't plan on any more major redesigns right now. I think there's such thing as a community rhythm, and we are in a rhythm where we are done with that for a moment.
For people listening, we're talking about the 3 main things of bump outs, road diets, and potholes.
Okay.
Those are the 3 things we're covering.
So sometimes I do ask people, do you mean the bump outs or do you mean the potholes? Because they, sometimes they're like, I don't care about the bump outs. And I think it's the 2 things together. It's what I found most often is that, we have the ability to do these major redesigns, but we don't have the ability to fill the potholes. And it's kind of this, if we can do that, why can't we do this? And so, So yeah, I don't plan on any more major redesigns, either road diets or bump outs, and just a basic resurfacing. Let's just pay attention to the current infrastructure we have, and I also think we need to look beyond roads as infrastructure. This is something that's I'm happy to always respond to what's on people's minds. But I think we're limiting ourselves if we're only thinking about infrastructure in terms of roads. We've got lighting and sidewalks and trails and water management and sewer management. There's a lot more to infrastructure in a city than roads.
So I was saying the three main things that people talk about in this category is the bump outs that have happened, road dieting, and then the Midwest love of potholes.
Love to hate potholes, right?
Yes, that's right.
There's I've thought this before. I think the biggest thing with our roads in our community, which a lot of people lead to the point where that's a literal top three thing being talked about in this campaign. I always feel like there's a huge lack of why behind the what when it comes to road changes. People are driving, like you said, every day. This is something we experience every single day. We're driving, we're seeing these changes. And in my opinion, there's been a huge lack of communication of like, this is why road diets exist. This is why bump outs exist. This is why potholes are a never ending problem. So just to be clear for our listeners, and like I said, we did this in the last podcast as well. Just go through each three of those things, give your opinion on them in general. Do you explain, do you understand maybe the why of the what? Do you agree with the why of the what of what they are? Just so we have it all clear out there for people listening. So we'll start with bump outs.
Okay. I, again, don't plan to do anymore, and you're going to hear the same thing from me. Like, the reality is that they're here now. And so, I don't plan to spend a lot of money tearing them out. And I won't lie to people to say that I will. So I had a woman, at a meeting say, I'm going to vote for the person who's going to tear out those bump outs. I said, I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not going to do that. I do think we need to adjust them in a couple of areas. And the place that I hear most often is up by Second Missionary Baptist Church and on Apperson. So, something needs to be adjusted. Obviously, I don't know what it is quite yet. I got to get on the inside to know that, but, that's the feedback that I hear. So, the reality is, again, you're going to hear me emotionless with this. We have them. Let's move forward. So I don't plan to do anymore.
The strategy of road dieting.
I understand it. I understand the philosophy. I read the book of A Walkable City. I think the advantage that we have received with that is more sidewalks and more pedestrian friendly. I say that because the reality is that not everyone drives the streets every day. Thousands of people ride the trolley every day. Thousands of people walk. Thousands of people use their bicycles. So not for fun, right? Because it's their main mode of transportation. And so if you get outside of what does that mean for cars and think about what it means for people who are using alternative forms of transportation, I think that's a benefit of it. But again, they're here, so I don't plan to rip out sidewalks to increase lane sizes.
Gotcha. And then potholes.
Let's fill them.
All right.
Good enough. So no, actually I have a plan on that, right? I have more knowledge about.
My plan is to take some concrete and put it in the hole and then pat it down.
What you're going to do is, so no, I think if we focus on resurfacing, then we will be preventing a lot of that destruction. We're in Indiana. We've got freezing and thawing of roads. We've got potholes. But if we can invest more in machines, equipment for the city of Kokomo, we have a street department that can work on potholes. They can work on it earlier if we don't have to wait for asphalt companies to open in the spring, which they do because in the cold temperatures, if something goes wrong, it would be a disaster for them to try to fix anything. So. But we can have a hot asphalt machine. Like we can make that ourselves. And so the patches would be more effective than the cold patches. So I do plan to invest in that. Let's bring some of that in house. Let's get ahead of it so that we're not waiting every year. I think people have a tolerance. Oh, spring potholes. And then for real, when are you going to fix the potholes? And so I think with those two strategies, one, get ahead of it with resurfacing, two, get the equipment in-house so that we can actually start patching those before
not relying on a subcontractor or a vendor to do it. Yeah,
that's my plan.
Yeah, and this is a perfect example of one of those things I was talking about, where our city can survive extremely, really hard, difficult times, but then potholes make us
Yeah.
go nuts. Which
we
it's
drive
the
them
Midwest.
every day,
Yeah,
right?
it's true.
I
I mean,
mean,
I never thought about
it's
that.
the light
but-
switch example.
yeah.
It's the daily.
It's
what
here.
we're used to.
The light
Yeah.
switch is here.
And, like,
It's
you
not there.
physically feel it.
Yeah.
mean,
like it should be there.
Yes,
Yeah. No, it's not.
Yeah.
Okay, next question. This is a question from a voter. This
Mm-hmm.
is from Joseph Parker on Facebook. He asks, while our current administration seems to have taken the build it and they will come mindset in regards to revitalizing and redeveloping our downtown area and the city in general, what specific strategies will you implement to attract businesses and companies, small and large, to relocate, expand, or establish a location or additional jobs in Kokomo? Our city has been heavily dependent on the auto manufacturing industry for so many decades, and while this is fantastic for our economy, while car sales are strong, a pullback in that industry affects us much more than others. We need better job diversification. And again, that's Joseph Parker on Facebook.
Thanks, Joseph Parker on Facebook. So the question is, how will we specifically bring businesses here or help them establish? So to Drew's point earlier, we do have an economic development alliance. So I don't want to pretend like we would be coming in as the hero, but the real question is, how do we leverage what they're able to do with city resources and create a culture where we are a great place to do business, not only relocate, but also establish a business and take the risk. We're the city where we're behind you and your community's behind you. This is a place where you can thrive. I think that the easy answer here is this concept of an industrial park, right? Like we have to have a place that's shovel ready for for companies to come. And in that mindset, you're thinking big companies. My thought is a little bit different in this, and you're gonna rain down on me that how can that be done, Abbie?
Oh, how dare I?
How dare you? But that's okay. I'm not afraid of that. We have a giant asset on the south side of our community across from Chrysler, in the General Motors property. So
the graveyard of a place,
yeah. And it's, they're still here, right? I mean, there's still people working there. And again, some of those people 2 to 3 years from retirement want to make sure their job is there. So I'm not, making that a small issue by any means because it affects people. But, in my opinion, if our strategy is to tie ourselves more closely to Indy Metro and make sure that that is a two-way street, then the logical place is to reimagine that footprint of where the GM property is right now and make that a mixed use business park. And that is what ties us to Indy Metro. So it's going to take a lot of work. But one of the things that you kind of led to earlier, Drew, in the culture of comfort in Kokomo and hard change, right? As long as we drive by that and see that in the current state, I think it's very difficult to shift our mindset to a future-focused one. We think about what was and not what could be. So to me, if we're talking about real big transformational change in Kokomo, that has to be dealt with. We cannot let it sit in its current state any longer. I realize people work there, and I realize there are property taxes being received, but the question is, what's the best thing for the people of Kokomo as a whole? And to me, that's an opportunity that needs to be reimagined and going forward. And we need to be brave enough to go fight for it. Like, big companies and environmental issues and all of those. I know those things, and I still want to fight for it.
Mm-hmm.
It's because whatever you do to that spot, that could even strike an emotion of negativity. Like if you knock it down or whatever, people could have that moment of sadness of
as they should.
Oh, it's official. Like there's nothing there. Yeah. A reminder of 08 or whatever years before. But at the same time, have that realization, but move forward.
Right.
It's gone. This happened it's been gone for a while.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But physically show that it's gone. And then you move forward from there.
And
going back to that,
opinion,
the reality of the situation doesn't care about your feelings.
It doesn't care about your
That's another example of that, though.
Yeah. But feelings are very real. And quite honestly, I think that it makes it harder for people to see it in the current state. I mean, I can't tell you how many people will say, I remember when I had to move my car. I would get there and I'd have a parking spot way at the back. And then on break, I would move my car closer. And that was awesome. And that was a very long time ago. So what are we going to do now? who is brave enough to step up and say, you don't get to sit on that big of an asset in the city of Kokomo and do nothing with it. You just don't. That is not acceptable to me. So what are we going to do?
Is that like an intimate domain type of situation?
I have no idea. We'll work on it though.
I've heard that term. Yeah. There's been certain buildings around Kokomo.
I don't think that's one. I mean, I think if that were possible, it would have been done.
Sure.
But I think it's just a matter of leveraging the voice, this collective voice, and getting the right partners in place to go fight for it.
It's good.
Would you move forward with that without having something in place? So that what you're saying is that could be that industrial park we're talking about.
But I wouldn't call it industrial park, because what are we trying to get more reliant on manufacturing, right? We always want that to be an option, but I would call it a mixed use business park with shovel ready sites, and the infrastructure is already there. We have a reinforced electrical grid there.
So I guess in my head, when I say industrial park, I'm not just thinking factories, and there's many industries in this park. It could be a lot. I
think branding is important, right? Communication is important.
Yeah.
So I think using that different language so that we can imagine something different is important.
Sure. So makes sense.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, the next thing I want to ask you about is a general topic, kind of a theme that we picked up from the responses, and that's police officers. I should just say in law enforcement in general.
Hire them. Is that good? Right.
It's good. Good answer.
I'm seeing a trend.
I mean, it's been a very interesting road with that. So I mean, these are obviously germane topics. Public safety is something that a mayor is responsible for at the end of the day. So you have to step up and work on it. We need more KPD officers. We need a net gain. It'll be tough to get to a net gain because, just like everyone else, 50% of them are eligible to retire in the next 2 to 3 years, and it's a long onboarding and training process. So we must get going now. I would say we're behind. So this is the first time I'm going to say a number. Are you ready for that?
I'm ready.
Based on the current budget of the city and the average cost of an officer, what the officers say they need, and what is prudent within the budget, I think we need to get close to 100, perhaps up to 102. That will be tough. We have 78 sworn officers right now, and just the reality of wait times at the academy and hiring. It's a very tight job market anyway. But I think that's the goal that we need to shoot for.
Okay. 98 to 102?
78 to 102.
Oh, yeah, but your range of where you think it needs to be 100 to 102.
Yeah. A wide range of 2.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, because the money is there. It's been appropriated for that. And so, and so based on the other pieces of that, the thing that's getting left out of the public safety conversation, in my opinion, is training. It's not the same as it was in the 20th century. I mean, we are facing complicated issues, and I think if we keep trying to go back, we won't ever be able to address the current issues that we have or future issues that we have. So we have very complex mental health issues, and if officers come upon a scene and they are not very easily able to assess what is a trauma-informed behavior and what is a mental illness and what is a real threat. And if they cannot do that in an instant, which can you imagine repeatedly trying to do that in an instant, it's extremely difficult. So building in this training and decompression time and utilizing the chaplain service more and just kind of making that part of the protocol. Brains are brains. I mean, it needs a break. They just do. And repeated exposure to adrenaline-fueled experiences turns into cortisol, which is a neurotoxin. So it's irresponsible not to build in that time for their brains to reset and heal and get back on board. So what I have through research figured out is that there's this 60% saturation rate. So if an officer spends 60% or more of their time in response for calls, then they are consistently in a reaction mindset, and that's not a healthy or safe place to be, but also means even the other 40% of their time they cannot get back into proactive. It's just an impossibility with the time and brain function. So it's not a criticism, it's just a reality of the human brain. So if we can make that a goal as well. So how do we ensure that officers are not going over 60% on average, right? Some days are going to be nuts. They just are. Everybody has a nuts day. Some days are going to be dead. But on average, if they're spending more than 60% of their time in service, in response to calls for service, then we need to address it. And it's going to be with more people.
Interesting.
That seems to be the overall consensus. I feel like a lot of people say we need more.
Yes.
Why do you think we don't now? Like, what's going on now? Because it seems the more conversations I have about it, the more I listen about it, it's obvious.
Right. I think it's a different philosophy, and it's not mine to explain.
From the current administration. Yeah. Interesting.
But let's not forget the fire department.
Yeah.
So, right. So, that's the other piece of public safety that I think we aren't having a full conversation about. I do think we need more firefighters. I don't have a number for that. I haven't had.
It's definitely been the second tier of the conversation, or this time around.
Yeah. Well, there's less data, kind of. I mean, there are general recommendations, and there's a study, and from the International Association of Firefighters, they have a consensus recommendations guidebook that they put together, and it's helpful. But then when you try to put that into a reality of, okay, so what are we going to do? Just like every best practice or a kind of recommendation, you can't meet all of them. So, I need a better access to understand exactly what we need. But
it's a sensitive area to the city, the current administration, and our fire. So it's probably hard to have conversations.
It is very hard to have a conversation, and it's very hard to have a conversation based on
facts, not feelings.
Right, and reality and future. Yeah. So there's a lot of we used to have. I understand it, and maybe that's right for us. So maybe we get that again. I'm completely open to that conversation. But we certainly can't actually go back to the past. Yeah. So we have to think about what do we need now, and what are we going to do going forward. So I do know that we need more. They're burnout, and they work a lot of hours, and it's a very stressful job, and the fire service industry has changed as well. So and what we continue not to address is mental health, both fire and police, and I would say first responders and dispatch, but also the very, very real health risks to firefighters. The things that are burning in homes are not natural.
Supposed to be burning.
Yeah. They're probably not supposed to be in existence, let alone on fire, right? And so the cancers of absorption, so, testicular cancer, pancreatic cancer, all kinds of things that it's where the, turnout gear meets the other turnout gear, right? So it's where it touches your skin. So just making sure that we're protecting them, not only just from burnout in general, the culture, but also physically protecting them, because their cancer rates are 2/3 the time, or 3 times what everyone else's are. So I mean, they're doing it for us. So I don't understand why we're not fighting for them. A lot of that is not only preventative on the front end, but also fighting for workers' comp benefits at the state level. That any diagnosis of cancer in a firefighter, regardless of when they're diagnosed, should be assumed to be because of the fire service. And then, we really haven't even gotten into fire prevention. I've talked to several firefighters who talk about the state of some of the homes that they get called to, and, they're at risk. I mean, those homes are at risk because they don't have smoke detectors, or they're, using, space heaters when they don't have the furnace working, things like that. So if they could get more involved with fire prevention, I think, my opinion is that, they'd be more fulfilled, and they'd be, excited to do that because, they don't want anyone to get hurt in a home. They don't want anyone to lose their home, and they certainly, for their own safety, shouldn't be going into, but they will, because they will go in to save someone. That's just how they're built.
It's their job.
It's literally the job, and they signed up for it willingly. So, but we owe them that protection and that conversation about prevention.
It's interesting, off of this topic, you're in a unique situation where you're in the same political party as the person leaving office.
Right.
And I'm not assuming, I know there's a lot of people assume since you're in that same political party,
right,
that you believe 100%
right,
the exact same things that the current administration believes. And police and number police is one of those issues. So I guess I'm glad we're having this conversation and like, it's very clear to the point, the benefits of a podcast. Right. But I mean, we're having that conversation, but talk about that, like what that's been like as a candidate in that situation, breaking through some assumptions that are probably there and maybe some lies that are being talked about.
I would say that a lot of those assumptions are being fueled by outright lies. And that's a very effective strategy. It doesn't have to be true to make it effective. And that's frustrating. It is difficult. So, I mean, I have said before, my kind of standard answer, because it's true, is that Mayor Goodnight and I have a great relationship. It's professional and friendly, and I respect what he's done and what he's been able to do. Especially, we've talked about, 2008 was rough, right? And I mean, that's a rough time.
Was that his first year?
He was elected in 2007. So, so
for
the first time.
Welcome to the office.
Right.
Jeez.
So it's a very difficult position to be in, and I don't, wouldn't wish that on anybody, but, healthy, but I'm not him. I mean, we work very, very differently, and nobody knows that better than the two of us, because we've had very healthy conversations about our disagreements before, but, like any good relationship, you have to have healthy boundaries. And the nice thing about where I am is I don't work for him. I've never worked for him. It's a very different dynamic when you are ultimately accountable to him in your livelihood, and when you're not, and I am not. And so that allows a different relationship. So I think that a lot of assumptions are based on people's own interactions with Mayor Goodnight, and not necessarily looking at what is the actual relationship between the two of them, other than we are both Democrats and care about the community. And
that's a huge thing that you're both Democrats and this would be the same on the Republican side. Our country does a really, in my opinion, I feel like we're horrible at it, using our political parties as just a point of competition.
Yeah.
And it's so easy to just be so negative towards one party if you're the other party, the same way if you're a Colts fan and a Patriots fan. And like, that's what we've turned it into. And it's
silly.
It's silly. And honestly, I think George Washington warned us about it.
I mean, he did. I mean, according to Hamilton, the musical, he did.
Yes, it's true. So, that's gospel.
Right.
Hamilton. So,
right.
You're in an interesting spot. I mean, don't envy that spot.
Well, thank you so much.
I'm glad we're having conversations there.
I've kind of started to think about it, in a different way. So, I mean, I've been making this argument that we're in local politics. So let's kind of get over that party thing, because, right. And so that's true. The other thing is I am a Democrat. I mean, I am. I believe I'm a Democrat because I fight for working families, and I believe in people, and I want the best for them. And that's the, kind of bellwether for, is this best for the people of Kokomo or is it not? And that's the decision maker, period. So, that's what I believe being a Democrat is. And so I am. However, I also am annoyed, quite frankly, that we've allowed the Democratic Party to be so narrowly defined. And there are so many more of us. I mean, this is the party of diversity, and diversity in every way. This is the party where everyone is welcome and celebrated, not tolerated, welcomed and encouraged. And so I think we need to fight for that back. We need to get a little bit angry, right? I mean, I think that the Republican Party has effectively used fear and anger as a persuasion tactic. And okay. I mean, I'm makes me angry, quite frankly, when people get their rights stepped all over. It makes me angry when they're not valued and put at the forefront. Just because I have control over my emotions, and what is it? The reality does not
care about your feelings.
Yeah, the reality doesn't care about your feelings. Just because I'm able to do that doesn't make me any less of a fighter or any less angry about where we've gone. So that's a frustrating point. Like, you don't hold the license on anger. I'm mad too.
Sure.
I'm mad for different reasons. I also don't let it cloud my judgment.
Yeah, good.
Good. Okay, we have a voter question. This is from Sarah Bauman-Hemrick on Facebook. She says, our current mayor has been very supportive of Kokomo schools, through frequent school visits, attendance at school events, etc. What will you do to support the school system where a majority of the city's children attend?
Well, does it count if I visit each Central Middle School and Sycamore School twice daily? Like, does that count? Right? Okay. So, yes. So I guess the best way to say this is my children go to and always have gone to Kokomo schools. I, chose that. We actually live in Western District. So Western are great schools and parts of the city touch different districts. But to Sarah's, question where the majority of children go, when we moved, it was, okay, where are we going to go to school? And honestly, we got a lot of push to go to different school systems, like, oh, you want to move here because it's in this district or that district, and a lot of it was, it's not in the Kokomo schools district. And, fastest way to get me to do something is tell me I can't. So I just wanted to explore, why is it that so many people want me to not be in this district? And what I discovered was, an amazing program from pre-K to 12 focused on the world and creating international global citizens at, 4 years old and 18 years old and everywhere in between. And so I've gone to the schools several times and will continue to do that as mayor. I'm very proud of Kokomo schools. And when people talk about the issues that they have, whether schools are too big or too small, or, the teachers aren't focused on the students, they're focused on themselves, and the administration doesn't understand. And any school corporation is going to have those issues, but I have full faith, that my children are comfortable and welcomed at Kokomo schools, that they're learning how to be global citizens and welcome other students, especially with the international program that you're hosting a student. We hosted 2 Chinese students for a couple of weeks, and last school year. It was awesome. It was exhausting. I don't know why I did that. Nate was traveling. I took it on by myself. It was dumb, but it was amazing. I'm
because
so
don't tell you
glad.
that you can't do
don't
something.
tell me I can't do something. Yeah.
You can't host Chinese kids. Watch me.
They'll have the best Kokomo experience they've ever had.
That's right.
But yeah, I think that if you give your children the opportunity to be around people who are different from them and teach them not to be afraid of that, then you're doing right by them. And that's the responsible thing to do. And Kokomo Schools provides that opportunity, not only to my children, but hundreds of others.
Yeah, I'm like a month in from being a parent of a Kokomo Schools kid. It's amazing.
It is amazing.
I'm already seeing things of Ellie coming home. I'm like, oh, did they tell you that? Or like just knowledge is happening?
Yeah.
No, but same thing. We've had an exchange kid last year. Rosie is her name that she's chosen. She lived in the dorm and then on the weekends came to our house, and this year she's actually like full time in our home, a part of our family. And like, so she's a senior this year. So we're talking college last night, and like, she's genuinely thinking about IUK. So she doesn't have to like leave us and like could still be a part of our family. It's a thing.
I know, but you need to do what's best for her.
Oh, I didn't say that.
I'm just saying.
Yeah. So it's interesting. Our family's been insanely blessed by like that. And like, I grew up in a very white school, like not a lot of culture outside of my own. And like the fact that my kids, I love the idea that my kids are growing up in a home, because we're so in love with the idea. If Rosie goes to wherever, we'll get another one. We'll host another kid. I love the idea that my kids are growing up in a home constantly around someone not like them.
Right.
That like when Rosie came here, she didn't even speak English.
Right.
Like
and
our kids work through that.
Right.
And
You
like,
don't separate. You don't just go back to your own, your own clique. You have to dig in, because
really
somebody's got to
funny.
show her how to where the toothpaste is.
Yeah,
right.
right.
Like,
there's so many stories. Like when we go to a restaurant, Rosie's first year, like barely speaking English. But by the way, these kids are insanely resilient. What they can do is so much more than what I can do.
There's no way I would have done that
I know.
at 16 or 17.
But like we go to a restaurant and like the waitress said, Rosie, what would you like? And like one of the first few times, Ellie was like, she doesn't speak English. What do you need? Okay, I'll tell her. But immediately, like our kids recognized that and like wanted to help.
And the role is intermediary.
It's an amazing thing. And I was the hesitant parent about it. Aaron was all about it. I'm like, I don't know. That's a pretty big undertaking, but I zero regret. Yeah. It's amazing.
It's really cool. Yes, I'll keep dropping them off, picking them up and keep attending events and all of that.
That pickup line and drop off line, that's something
I'll tell you what,
too.
Sycamore's got it down now.
Yeah.
Sycamore has got that. Has got it on
well-oiled
lock, and
machine.
I'm loving it.
Yeah.
Mrs. Walker's out front. We got that.
Okay, another general topic for you that we picked up through the feedback that we got, just in general, crime in Kokomo.
I don't want any more.
Yep. Good. I liked it.
Thanks for listening,
short
folks.
and sweet. Yeah.
So yeah, I think it ties right in with public safety, but also a little bit about what we were talking about earlier with economic development and job training. I think that it's a lot harder to make short-term decisions for long-term benefit when you are hopeless and don't see that those will pay off. So I think the more we can focus on family financial stability and wraparound services and how do we stabilize families and get them facing forward, the better able we'll be to fight crime. I think a lot of times people are specifically asking about opioid and drug use issues when they are thinking about crime, although we see shootings and other violent crime. First, it's not just opioids, and it hasn't ever just been opioids. People don't just use one drug in isolation almost ever. And the other reality is that the solutions are there. I mean, we have very smart medical professionals and social workers who can tell you that it's a 90-day recovery and detox and recovery process. It's medically assisted treatment, it's destigmatizing, and it's sober housing. So you can't go back into the environment that you were in before. Except the thing is, all that costs money. And so then we say, oh my gosh, this is so big. How will anyone ever solve it? Well, we just told you how to solve it. You just got to pay for it. So, that is the constant frustration I can tell you in human services, is that we've got people with advanced degrees who have so much experience who tell you what works. And then you're like, well, that's hard. And it costs too much money. Okay, cool. But, if you want to know how to solve it, this is how we do it. So the other thing is, I said this in the April candidate forum that the League of Women Voters and Alliance and the Perspective and Tribune hosted. And I think it got some pushback, like, what? This isn't our responsibility. But we cannot put crime solving and elimination on the backs of our police officers. This is not their job alone. We count on them to respond to something when we need them, and then it's our responsibility to create a community where we just simply don't tolerate this. And to Drew's point, it's small changes in the culture of a community where this isn't, we build bridges and we assist each other. We don't, be recluse in our homes and drive in and shut the garage door and then never talk to anyone ever. We want neighborhoods that are welcoming and safe pathways to school and things for kids to do. I just went to, I don't know if you guys have been there. Speaking of small businesses, you should have him on. Coach Law from Iron Fist, boxing. He is amazing. And what they're doing there is
They do like boxing
awesome.
lessons?
Yes.
Always had a weird desire to learn
So
to
you
box.
should do it. Yeah, it's so great. But he's a perfect example of someone who saw something and thought, I can do something about this, and then did it.
Cool.
And you just do it.
It's an entrepreneur right there.
That is an entrepreneur. He's a social entrepreneur in this case. But yeah, just do it. If you have the idea, nothing should stop you. It's a risk, right?
Well, it's
and
someone
it
who
creates a lot of, or it requires a lot of hard work.
Someone asked the question, there's got to be a better way, and then they actually find that way and do it.
And then do it, yeah. Right. So yeah, he's got, the kids are good too. They're good. This is a legit boxing place. And he told me the story. I met a young woman, early high school, I think mid high school. And she was was the last chance. She had been in trouble, and this was the last chance, and all F's and all of that. A year later, she's competing and she's got all A's and she's feeling good and she's healthy. And, I asked her, I said, does it feel better? Do you feel better? She's like, oh my gosh, I feel so much better. And you think about a child, she's a child and she's carrying around that weight, and she just takes somebody saying, I care about you enough to try, and I'm not giving up on you. So it's not, crime is not the police's problem. It's all of our problems. So do something.
You're hearing similar stories out of the Man Up program.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a developmental asset of children is an adult that is not their parent caring about them and asking how they are. And so if we can get more people connecting with kids and acknowledging that they need us. And yes, it's an inconvenience to take an exchange student into your home, right? I mean, you could have gone on and not done that and you would have, motored. But what a wonderful experience for her. And so you just kind of, take that same philosophy that it's easier to not do something. It sure is. But the consequences of that are never good.
It goes back to my definition of maturity. We made the hard decision to have that exchange student because we knew what it would do for our family later. Right. You make that hard decision of training a kid in boxing and teaching them leadership, discipline, all the things that go along with boxing because it'll help them with their future. Same thing with Man Up. I mean, the same program idea, type of thing. It's the definition of maturity for me, which we're maturing a whole community, which is a great thing.
It's good. Okay.
It's good.
I'm like taking notes.
Last
voter question. This is from Connor Sanborn on Facebook. He asks, how do you plan to contribute the efforts of redesigning our streets and neighborhoods for more pedestrian and bike-friendly traffic? And what knowledge and skill set of urban planning do you have that would allow you to follow through on these efforts?
I'm super good at asking questions. So I'm very good at bringing experts together. So I'm not going to pretend to be an urban planning expert, but I certainly can ask. I think that we've made really good progress on becoming more pedestrian and bike friendly. But I take Webster a lot and there's a bike lane there and that's terrifying. Like to think about, I mean, it's a wonderful start. But I think we need to keep going and pushing on that. And I'm not sure exactly where. One opportunity I do think we have is to just keep connecting the trails and pedestrian friendly areas that we have to each other. So how can we make sure that, people have, I think I talked about in a coffee club this week that, how do we make sure that people on the south side have access to Jackson Morrow? It is so close, except it requires riding your bike on Center Road, and I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm certainly not taking my children. No, and so we go less often.
I've done that. It's not smart. It's not a smart idea.
We have access to transportation. We could drive there, but some people don't. And they still need to get around. And that's just talking about going for a bike ride, right? Like for leisure. But even using it as transportation, and this is your main form of transportation. A lot of people use bicycles for that and walk for that. I talked to a family on Tuesday who they don't have a driver. It's a granddaughter living with her grandmother and then her 3 children, and they don't have a car because she has seizures and the grandmother just doesn't drive anymore. So they're kind of stuck, and I walked, I've 177 and a half miles. I can tell you the sidewalks in some neighborhoods are awesome and in many neighborhoods are not. I literally, if you imagine a broken sidewalk, I step up onto a broken sidewalk and rode it down and then walked across and rode it back down like a seesaw the other side. And if you use a wheelchair or a scooter in any way, there's no way you're navigating that. And so I have talked to a lot of people in their homes who say, just make sure you don't cut the trolley. You're going to keep the trolley, right? I mean, the panic on their face that I would get rid of the trolley is heartbreaking. And
Erin
of course not.
Erin tells a story. She had one of her childhood friends come and visit years ago before the trolley. And that was one of the first things she noticed. She's like, do you guys not have any public transportation? Right. And Erin's like, no, we don't. I mean, Erin's fortunate enough, I have a car. It's great. I don't need it. And there's no traffic. Right. But their friend's like, but what about people that don't? And it was weird. It was one of their first observations about Kokomo and this trolley system. Is it still the largest free one in the country or maybe just the state? I forget.
No, in the country.
The country,
the largest ridership of
free. Yeah. I mean, it's been huge for the community. I feel like it keeps we buy more and more. It's just expanding.
And I hear all the time, we wish we had it in the county. I mean, where that line stops. I mean, people can't get in from the county to the city, and it's a real disservice to people living in rural areas that they don't have.
That's probably really common too.
Oh yeah.
Rural areas not having something like that.
It is. Yeah. But I mean, you think about, we have this so close, it could have been,
even just a little bit. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think it is wonderful. And I think, as much as it is recreational to some people, facing the reality that it's essential, it's an essential service to others is really more on my mind, than the other, just because, I mean, people have to get to work and they've got to walk or bicycle to get there.
I'm constantly seeing this summer, especially, people just on Facebook, tweets, whatever it is, people loving the trails in this community. And I love seeing a tweet of someone first time ever on them. We're like, holy moly, this is amazing. I didn't know this existed.
Yeah.
People are loving that.
That was my experience this summer.
Yeah. Cause you did the Coco Go bike. Yeah.
Was it amazing?
My husband and I mean, it was a date night and we found things we had never seen before, and my husband's a lifelong Howard County resident.
And you can just go and go.
Yeah.
And people don't realize it's
awesome.
on them.
Yeah.
And it was beautiful and safe and, we thoroughly enjoyed the city.
Yeah.
But again, that was for leisure. It wasn't an essential.
But I still, I mean, I think, it's a mix of both of those things.
Yeah.
Like you have to have things that people want to do. I wish we could get, that connected east-west better and making sure that people can cross 931. That's dangerous for people. So
I could see another bridge, kind of like they put on the north end, a bike path bridge to go over. Yeah. Cause that looks nice. And people love that too, to connect.
Yeah.
You could probably have 3 of them actually.
I mean,
on north, middle,
have
and south.
You could just
So many bridges. We'll be the Carmel of bridges instead of roundabouts.
Stop that. I did not say that.
That was me.
Disclaimer to say that I know. That's the only thing that's going to come out of this podcast. It's like, Abbie wants
the
to
title of the
podcast. Yeah, if you do that.
Bridge lady wants
Abbie Bridges Smith.
Okay, Abbie, we'll wrap up our conversation here with one final question. Let's say you are elected the mayor of Kokomo.
I plan to.
Congrats.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
What is your dream for Kokomo? What would our community look like 4 or 5 years from now at the end of your term?
So I really like this question. Excuse me, because I've already actually done the work and the master plan on this. This literally says the master plan on the top of it. So the one small thing for success that you asked about, was that book, GTD, Getting Things Done. And one of the planning pieces of that is horizon level planning. So the runway, which is what we deal with every day, is just the literal next actions. And then horizon 1 is just the successful outcome that you're working on. What's this project look like? What does success look like? Horizon 2 is kind of the categories of things you're responsible for. 3 is 1 to 2 years. 4, 3 to 5 years, and 5 is why are you on this planet? And so, you kind of, I've done some introspective work to figure out why I think I'm on the planet. And then in this new context for me, I have Horizon 4, which fits into the time frame of your question. So, Horizon 4 was I want to shift the culture in Kokomo to one where citizens are using established avenues to engage with each other and with their city government for positive, forward-focused change in the city. So it's a cultural shift, and it requires leaning on each other and communicating with each other and collectively increasing the power that we have as a city.
Yeah.
Mic drop. So in my
head, it's just a tornado isn't the only thing that should make us Kokomo strong.
Yeah, it really.
We should be Kokomo strong every single day.
And that takes intentional hard work on connecting and communicating. And I have gotten some flack over the course of this year. When are you going to stop facilitating and start leading? And I'll tell you what, nothing makes me more frustrated than that, because I'm like, do you want me to define facilitate for you? It literally means to make things easier to get done. But there are different kinds of leadership, and it's not always a top down, do it my way type of leadership. But it does require action. You can't sit on the sidelines. You have to have 1,000 difficult conversations and make it out the other side to bring people together. And so anyway, do you want to know why am I on the planet?
Sure.
Yes.
So
to crochet those pillows?
To crochet them sunroom pillows, right? Sunroom specifically.
Sunroom, sorry.
No, to empower people to use their voices to reach their full potential. So when I think about how can I do that in the context of being the mayor of Kokomo, this is the way that I feel like I can do it. It's to make sure that, creating a culture where people are using established avenues. So that means I have to establish them. Probably use a bridge or something.
Probably. It's a great strategy
You
for
can use
it.
this as a metaphor as well.
Yeah.
Well, Abbie, truly, truly thank you for
you're
coming
welcome.
on the podcast today. It was our pleasure to have you here. Thank you for answering the questions. Thank you for your leadership in our community. We appreciate you, and best of luck.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts?
No, just thanks for coming on. It was great to have you. I'm super excited we did this for the candidates and
Yeah.
had this type of forum in place. I said on the other podcast, I'm a big Joe Rogan podcast person,
Yeah.
which who isn't right now, I guess, but he about a month or so, you need to be if you're not.
Okay.
About a month or so ago, he actually had Bernie Sanders on his podcast, and it blew my mind because it wasn't what you normally have, which is a 30-second soundbite or a pull quote in a newspaper article.
Right.
It was his podcast went like 3.5 hours with Bernie, and
Yeah.
you see such a human side of a
Right.
political candidate when the conversation is this. And we never cut you off today. There was no time limits.
Right.
We joked
90 seconds.
Yeah, like what we joked with Tyler as well. Like the forums that happened. Hey, crime in our community. What are you going to do to solve it? You have 45 seconds. to answer it. And like
Yeah.
you just can't do that. So
Well,
I'm just
my answer is now end it.
yes. You're good all
There
the
you go.
time. But I mean, I'm excited this happened. I think this will be a great resource for people trying to make that decision on who, they're going to believe in November and vote for. And thank you for being willing to do it. And
Of course.
thanks
Yeah.
for being here. I think it's great.
Thank you very, very much. It is a frustrating process when you have complex, big thoughts that you want to communicate, and you know that any single thing that you say could be what's pulled, and it most likely is not going to be the meat of what you said.
Yeah.
And you have a very short amount of time to do it.
Yeah.
So
So hopefully this eliminates that.
yeah,
Yeah.
and everyone will listen to every single second.
Hopefully.
That's right. Well, for those of you who have listened to every single second, thank you so much for joining us today. I will have in the show notes below links to all the places you can find Abbie and more information about her campaign. And as always, you can find us over at lyracymedia.com. Thanks for joining us, and we will see you next time.